All right, we're back for week 2. Feeling cloudy. Sean and Scott, how you going, brother?
I'm doing good. How are you doing, buddy?
I'm awesome, man. It's 11:10 p.m. on a Saturday night, so this is no place I'd rather be.
Yeah. 7 a.m. on Saturday morning here, and the rest of the house is asleep, and I'll be here having all the fun.
Even the dog, is the dog asleep?
He woke up, he had his breakfast, went back to bed. That's my
Uh,
dog is spends 18 hours a day in bed.
that's the life, man. You
Yeah.
could you could make a joke about this really easily about what a great life he has, but we'll and
Well, it's a dog's life.
yeah.
Yeah.
So big week. Let's start off with some reviewers. How about that?
Yeah.
So we've got 5-star reviews this week in our AWS course from Uni Krishnan, Ron Norman, and Ewan McLeod. Thank you very much, friends. That was very
Yeah.
kind of you to do that.
We
So
appreciate it.
yeah, the reviews are very helpful and encouraging. Really, when you think about it, when somebody likes the course, you think, "Well, I'm going to create more."
Right. Yeah, there's definitely a feedback that comes in through the questions and through the reviews that sort of powers the courses from week to week to week.
It's been speaking of the courses in particular on Udemy, it's been a big week because the Black Friday stuff. So you've
Yeah.
had a huge week with tons of new students, I would imagine.
I just crossed 60,000 unique students. So let me just check the update here, but 60,300 I crossed yesterday, 60,000. So I am super grateful to every person who's made the conscious decision to sign up for one of my courses, and I work hard every day to try to make it worth their money and bring extra value. Like I'm constantly updating courses even after they're live, which most instructors don't do actually, but got to make sure that everything in cloud is such a fast moving technology. I've almost got no choice because
Yeah,
it will be out of date next month.
it's like I got some copywriting courses and stuff like that, and that doesn't change.
Right.
Conceptually, it's kind of been like that for the last 50, 60, 80 years. It's not really going anywhere.
Yeah,
So
I bought some books. I bought some of the classics. I bought the Ogilvy book and Eugene Schwartzman, and a few other of the classic copywriting books. And so
you
these
bought
things were in the
you
80s and
bought
the 40s.
breakthrough advertising, right?
I did. Yeah.
That's a classic. That one's the
Yeah.
and you have the hardcover edition. So you're
Yeah.
you're a serious player. Have you
uh,
actually read it?
no, I'm looking forward to this magic time when I can stop worrying about the cloud training and getting back into reading and copywriting books. But I have them on my shelf. I can see them, so it's
You're like Gatsby.
they're
They're all there on the shelf. You've
they're
never cracked
waffling.
one of them.
It's I think the knowledge is waffling from a 1 meter distance into my brain.
You're learning by osmosis.
Yeah.
Best way to learn. So
Yeah, no.
you talked about updating courses and stuff. What did you get up to this week? What updates did you do?
So yeah, based on our discussion last week, it drove home to me that the way that the future of the way some companies are approaching the cloud is through container services. You were talking about a client who builds stuff in containers specifically so that they can deploy to Azure or deploy to Amazon or Google. And the container is actually an abstraction above, or another virtualization layer above the underlying virtual machine. So I created some videos this week. I created 4 videos on containers, and I did an overview and a bunch of detail. Actually, logged into the console and created containers in Azure. Um, so I've uploaded them. If you're a student of any of my Azure courses, 532, 533, 534, 535, you will you've seen in the course already. I haven't announced it yet, but in the course near the end, there's about 4 new videos on container services that you can check out.
And have you spent a lot of time working with containers in the past, or is this just kind of the first time you really had a severe look at it?
This is the first time I looked at it from the Azure perspective, and they call it AKS, which is Azure's Container Services. Within my so-called day job, we're using containers in our, we use Docker, and so we know how to Docker compose and get how quickly it is. You can download the code from GitHub, Docker compose it to get it running. And within, literally seconds, I guess you've got yourself a working version of the code on your local machine. So I love the idea of containers, and at work we get to use it, again, not basically in the local sense of getting stuff up running on our machines quickly. But, for the benefit of this course, to have to get into it in a bigger way within Azure. And
They're using Kubernetes, right?
Yeah, so Kubernetes is the Google technology. Google started creating their own containerized services about 10 years ago, and they've been working on it internally. And finally, they about 2 years ago came out with Kubernetes as an open source project. Kubernetes is an alternative to the orchestration layer. So like Docker Swarm is the sort of the direct competitor to Kubernetes. You can do Docker, and you can do what's the other one? There's a third one within Azure that's escaping my mind, but Kubernetes is the main one that they promote.
Everybody supports Docker, right? It's kind of like the AWS, Azure, every major platform will support Docker.
Well, I think they all support Kubernetes too, right? So like Google for sure, for one thing. I think AWS has to support Kubernetes. I haven't really looked into it, but that's again, it's an open source platform. It's super popular now. People have really taken to it. Google knows their stuff. Actually, a lot of people on the interwebs think that Kubernetes is a bit more sophisticated than the equivalent Docker Swarm. So it's sort of interesting to see, and it's a good thing that we have choices, obviously. But you wouldn't want to see every cloud vendor. I wouldn't want to see Microsoft have its own container platform, which is not compatible with Amazon, which is not compatible with Google. So having this a standard that all three support will be hugely beneficial. And actually, Amazon, we can transition into something that wasn't on the list, but Azure came out this week with support for VMware on Metal. So essentially, the VMware has its own stack of virtualization technology, vSphere, or vSphere, I guess.
vSphere, yeah.
Yeah, and so AWS a few months ago supports vSphere migration directly. Well, Azure came out, out of the blue, I guess, just a week or two before reInvent, and said that they're going to support vSphere. Not, you can access it through your Azure account, but it's running directly on Metal. So the competition is heating up. Everyone wants these vSpheres to be migrated into their cloud and won't be left behind,
Yeah, well, it's one of Microsoft have historically had the problem in heavily virtualized environments getting people to migrate to Azure, because that migration process from effectively, VMware to Hyper-V was not the easiest thing in the world to do. There had risks and everything attached to it. And then obviously last year, Amazon made the announcement with VMware that they were going to do VMware on bare metal in the marketplace, readily available. And the really interesting thing of that, this goes back to we touched on it last week, but the whole hybrid IT story, right? Like everybody in the enterprise space is talking hybrid IT. That's that marrying of the private cloud with the public cloud, and what you're going to be able to do with the AWS, and I presume the Azure one. I haven't really looked at it, but you're going to be able to run up your vCenter in your local environment, in your existing data center, and you're going to be able to vMotion, ESX hosts across from your local data center into the AWS cloud running on bare metal. And that's a pretty powerful paradigm. Now, the problem with that is when you start actually thinking about it is, okay, I'm Joe the customer. I'm actually paying a premium effectively to run VMware on AWS, or now I suppose Azure, and I'm already there.
Yeah.
Why don't I just get rid of VMware? Right.
Right.
That's the easy answer is, well, I can build my own AMIs and I can run it on EC2 and I don't have to do that. And you don't get a lot of the orchestration and things like, Site Recovery Manager and that kind of stuff, which is pretty powerful tools that VMware have. So I'm probably slightly oversimplifying the process, but I think you're dreaming in Technicolor if you're VMware and you don't think that Amazon are coming for you, right? Like, they're coming.
Well, the stuff that I read is that VMware is actually secretly happy that they're basically their core of their business is still intact. That these companies they haven't made a migration tool that effectively rips people out of VMware services. They're actually, lift and shift, essentially get them onto Azure, and VMware still collects the license fees. But like you said, it becomes a point where it's like, okay, going forward, if we're going to build something, we have Azure running on the back end, we have VMware running on the front end. Why don't we look into, again, a container or a cluster or
Absolutely. So I mean, VMware they're having a hustle, right? They've got NSX on the network side. They're building out their vSAN product on the storage, and they're really aiming for they want to be your full software defined data center player, which is a good spot to be, right? It's like, it's an interesting place to play, but yeah.
Are they actually building data centers?
No, so they had vCloud Air, right? And that was the extension, but they sold off most of that just prior to their announcement that they were going to partner with AWS. They sold, they kind of licensed it out here. Like here in Australia, for example, they worked with Telstra, and so Telstra owned the data center, and vCloud Air ran on top of it. But the problem with it was it was like one facility effectively, and they didn't have two zones, and there was no design for failure concepts. And if you really wanted DR, you had to build soft layer into it, which is like, why do I now have to deal with them? And so it didn't make a lot of sense, and they just couldn't get traction, right? Like AWS and Azure, if you start talking in that hyperscale world, they're untouchable, man. The money that gets spent by those guys building data centers is crazy.
No, it is crazy.
So there's a ton of money. So what anything planned for the week ahead on your on adding to the courses?
I'm gonna, I've got this list of to-dos because Microsoft did change the courses in October going into November, and then they're switching the 534 exam to the 535 exam starting in January, essentially. So I'm just preparing content. I've got a few things, event grid, and a few other things that I have to tackle in terms of training. So I'm not going too crazy. We're here. Neither of us are American, but Black Friday and the Thanksgiving holiday, we still have this taking it easy weekend. My wife and her family want to go shopping, I'm sure. So I won't be able to get it all done this week, but I'll have, chipping away at it.
Yeah, I have a couple of things. I have a busy work week next week, so the last couple of weeks have been crazy. So once that's over, I get back into it, and we've started the very early conversations about the next course, so that's good. We'll probably start on that sometime in December, I would have thought. Well, we've got time at Christmas. I get weeks off at Christmas because it's summer here in Australia. So
Right.
that's awesome sauce. But what about you? You got time off at Christmas?
So the place where I work, they go into a mode where no deployments are happening.
Code freeze.
Code freeze. And it's kind of crazy. I think they're talking about December 11th to January 18th of a code freeze.
Nice.
And but everyone's rolling their eyes because it's like, why do you need so much? Like it's 6 weeks of winter, you know?
Yeah, you're like the what's it, Poughkeepsie Phil or whatever it is, the groundhog.
Exactly. Yeah, maybe that's it. Yeah, the Punxsutawney Phil.
Punxsutawney Phil. That's right.
Anyways, it's that's what they said they'll do, but so I suspect that it'll be a little bit of a lull, but time off. I don't really have anything booked right now, so I'll see.
Yeah, that'll be a good time. I'll have some time, so I'll be able to work on some new stuff, which will be good. But
Yep.
Yeah. So slow week this week, slow week next week. Well, for course creation, but you'll be cracking on with it, so that'll be good.
Yeah, I'm working on something for January. There's a cloud data exam from Microsoft, and so I had a kind of a cute little idea, not a course per se, more of a boot camp idea. So
nice.
Maybe be running a boot camp in January for the I think it's 473 exam, which is cloud data platforms and setting up databases like SQL Server, MySQL, Postgre. I never know how to pronounce it. PostgreSQL.
Postgres.
Yeah. So those types of environments within Azure. So that's sort of a focused little thing, and it also qualifies you for your MCSA or MCSE in Microsoft.
So just on a totally separate topic, last week when we were doing this, I was looking at we have a run sheet, and I was looking at the run sheet. I had it in its stand on my iPad, and I was scrolling at it, down. You can't see me. I'm slick. I'm happening. and then obviously the stand fell, and right in the middle of the recording, this bang happened. And so this week I've decided that I'm going to put the run sheet off to my second monitor. So occasionally, if people see me looking, and the other thing I picked up last week, because for a show, there's going to be some problems. I have a pen, and I had the pen in my hand, and all through the show, you heard this.
Yeah,
I was fidgeting. So this week I've said, okay, can't have the pen in my hand because I'm an idiot. I can't stop touching it. So, and the third point that came up was last week, your swag game was like top shelf, right? You had the software architect T-shirt on. You had the Udemy drink bottle. So I thought, man, I got to lift. I can't do that. So I have my Pure storage mug, the fine purveyors of Flash Stack, all flash storage. and I then even went further, and I thought, well, I'll wear the Pure storage hat, but it's very orange, so I won't put that on my head because that's like a dunce cap, that thing. So I won't wear that. But there you go. So I've got my swag game happening. I was going to even wear some Nutanix socks, but it's a bit late for that.
Since you called me out on it during the week, I was very conscious of it. I thought, okay, I didn't choose my Udemy mug this week. I chose just a regular coffee mug.
Oh, no, look, I think I thought I'm going to lift because if anyone watching this wants to send us free stuff, I'm all for it. I'm happy to give you my address. You just landed in Australia. Off you go, right? So, anyone with swag they need us to pimp, happy to do it.
That's a good idea. Yeah, contact us if you want to send us a coffee mug or a
or a car.
Yeah, I was going to say
anything.
I saw an X4 yesterday, and I was like, "Wow, that's
no, that's that. You need a lot more students than that.
Really, for an X4?
I don't know. What do those cost over there?
Probably cheaper than what you get for it. Now, see, we've fallen off the rails here. $50,000.
There you go. We wouldn't even have to pay luxury car tax on that one. All right, so let's kind of get back on track here. Student question. So we had one from 5-star reviewer, Ron Norman, this week. And so Ron asked a question in the AWS course around in S3 where you use prefixes and delimiters because the object store in S3 is flat. So there's no concept of folders and subdirectories, right? So,
Yeah.
so
Same.
yeah, so right, blob storage, right? So,
Yeah.
so he asked a question. Well, if I create, an object that serves as effectively a folder, so the prefix, can I apply ACL permissions that are then inherited to the objects underneath that prefix? And that's kind of a good question. It has two answers. So the simple answer is no. You can't go into the console and just try and change the ACL and it will permeate through underneath. It doesn't work like that. It is flat, genuinely in S3, but you can use IAM policies. And so the way that will work is you apply the policy with a wildcard. And so everything with that prefix before it will have that policy applied. So that's kind of the trick to that. And that's where IAM policies like S3 and Amazon really don't want using ACLs much anymore because, as we discussed last week, they're pretty prone to poor security and poor management. So with IAM, you get a lot more power, but you can effectively take that IAM policy and apply it to. We were using in the course the example of bikes and red bikes, and then a mountain bike thing, and so you could apply everything with bikes /star, and then this policy would apply to that. So you can do it, but not with the simplistic ACL format. So,
Right.
so that was a good question from Ron. I had to think about it a little bit. He asked it, and I usually try and answer quite quickly. And I thought, I'm going to give this one some thought, because the simple answer would be yes, it's flat. No, you can't. But then it's like, well, but those policy things. And I just picked up my pen again. I have to put it down, or I'm going to start clicking. So that was a good question.
Yeah.
Did you have any questions that jumped out in your courses that were interesting?
No, I haven't pulled any out. Again, a lot of the people in the group, like we have our Feeling Cloudy group. Shout out to that if you want to look us up and join.
feelingcloudy.com/FB gets you to the group.
Right. And I have a group for Microsoft Azure, which is quite active, actually. Now we've got more than 3,000 members. We're getting discussions happening every single day. So it's a lot of people are asking. I had a student that messaged me and said, I just signed up for the exam and I want to know where to start. And it
at the beginning.
Well, exactly. It seems, the simple answer is sort of like you registered to take the test, or you intend to take the test. And then you come to someone like to me and say, how do I start to study? Makes me feel like just getting onto this, it's like an on-ramp to a highway, right? Once you're studying, you're like, you have a plan and you're going along and you're going at a certain speed and you're going to make to your destination. But if you're stuck at the on-ramp and you're like, how do I get onto this highway? That's sort of you really need a push, I guess. But I really, for that question, I really stopped and thought, well, I could make that sort of quick answer and just say, oh, just go to Microsoft's website and look at the requirements and things like that. But I really think people that want to get into taking exams, I might be disjointed here, but there's people who do the work, like the people like us who are working in the cloud, and going to take a test is a bit foreign, but it's understandable. And then when you get into the study track, you have to cover the requirements at different levels than you might use in your day job, right? So I sort of had to stop and really think about, like, you do have to go look at the requirements of the exam. Like, you can't just walk in to take a test without even reviewing what those companies want you to learn, and start to read through some of the official documentation. And it's very interesting when you think about from that beginner's mindset that they just don't even know how to start in the studying process. So I sort of struggle with that this week to come up with a good answer to
It,
somebody who doesn't even know where to begin to study.
it's interesting, right? Like that's a really good point. People who do this professionally often have a harder time with the tests than people
Yeah,
who are new to it, right?
you have
Because
a false sense of knowing everything.
well, and you know some things really well, and it's the classic case of to the guy with a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right?
Mhm.
So if you're a guy who's used to doing EC2 one way, it's really hard. I had an interesting one with Azure this week, so I have a good Azure story. I registered an account because I needed to do a bit of a demo, and I wanted the free hours. Let's be honest, I wanted the free
Yeah.
credits, so I registered with a new email address and got my free credits and started doing stuff. And within like 3 hours, I got a call from Microsoft. Hey, I'm so and so. Is there anything I can help you with to help you use Azure more?
Right.
It's like, no, but thank you. So
Yeah.
anyway, but it was interesting, right? Because what I was trying to do was I was trying to connect up a third-party application via the API, and I was trying to get credentials and stuff. And it just, I use Azure just not a lot, and so I kind of went, oh, okay. And then there's the classic portal, and then there's the new portal, and in the classic portal, it was actually pretty easy to go get your API keys, but in the new one, you need to have an account, and I just thought, man, this is just so hard, and I know exactly what I want to do, and yeah, those when you're used to doing something one way
Yeah.
and you use it a lot, it's it's very foreign to have to do it a different way. And in the tests, it can be quite pedantic about stuff like that, right? Like it's expected to know. So if you're a student and you're just kind of learning, it's easy, right? It's somebody I was talking to somebody about it this week, and they were saying, well, it's like being it's like working in finance, and then you go do an economics degree.
Yeah.
It's completely what they're talking about is
Right.
completely nonsense to you, but you actually have to learn it for the exam.
Yeah. It's like the difference between uh, boxing and street fighting or something like that, you know?
Yeah, so it's very
Yeah.
technical, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's if for those of you who are practitioners or solution architects or whatever, uh, when you sign up to do those exams, yeah, set aside a bunch of time to. What I think is really good is getting sample tests, right? Because it shows you just how badly you're gonna fail. Like it puts the fear of
Yeah.
God into you pretty quick, smart.
The the official Microsoft sample test is from a company called Measure Up, and they're actually not that good. Like I think it's classically,
They've
uh,
failed to measure up.
yeah, it's like the answers mark you wrong when you clearly aren't wrong, and there's just clear typos where they're asking something, you're like, no, I think you mean something else. You're not. Your question has a major grammatical error here. So, but now there's these companies coming out that actually, somebody, I'm thinking, but there's actually alternatives. Now I have sample tests for some of the Azure exams, but there are other alternatives, and I'm not naive enough to think that you have to buy mine, right? If there's a
But
good
people should buy yours.
if you say so.
Yeah, that's right.
But yeah, it's so thrilling to see so many more things start up to help people to learn. So a couple weeks ago I sent you links to these quick labs
Yeah,
where
yeah.
you can go in and they'll actually let you use their account on AWS to learn. So you get an hour or 2 hours of time included with your cost of buying this thing. So you pay for it, but it's a guided tutorial to do something, but you're actually using their credentials to do it. So it's like that's some really cool concepts in letting people learn without even needing to do the whole sign up thing.
I was this is going back some time, probably 17 years ago. I was doing my MCSE back then you could only be a systems engineer. That was all they gave you the option. Certified developer program wasn't really that
Mm-hmm.
popular. And I was in a prometric testing center doing one of my NT4 exams. and it was wrong. The question was wrong. I knew it was wrong. None of the answers were right. And it just sat there and went, I got to pick the worst possible answer here because this is not the right question. So occasionally they do get these things wrong.
Yeah.
And we're not talking like they've missed the Oxford comma wrong. Like it's just the question is wrong and the answers aren't there. So,
Right.
so yeah, you just take a lot of sample tests and
So
hope for the best.
Microsoft has gotten into this thing now where they're changing the exam I think every 90 days. They completely reflush all of the questions. So, I mean, this whole idea of exam dumps and people who go online now and try to remember all the questions that came up on their test. Microsoft sort of said, well, we're just going to have to clean out the exam bank every 90 days. And they have hundreds of questions to pull from so that your test and my test and his tests are never the same. So it's a constant battle for them. But
Brain dumps. That was what they're called, right? The brain dumps.
yeah, people are still looking for them.
Yeah, I don't get it. I just like, the whole point, I always think the whole point of sample questions and sample tests is to make you think the right way, not to actually give you the answer.
Right.
Like,
yeah, exactly. To show you in this scenario where you made the wrong decision and why.
well, it prompts you to go back and reread that section, right? Or revisit that part of a course you took or whatever, right? It's like I know of somebody who took the AWS, the course that we've created for the Solution Architect Associate course. And I know this guy, he went looking for the brain dumps.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's why you failed the first time you did it, right? That's why you got 40% because you tried to take a shortcut. So, yeah, no, it's hard. So let's move on to some cloud news, shall we?
Yep.
So this week, Amazon announced that, I don't know if you announced this or it just kind of got out, but anyway, it's one of those ones. It's not, is it an announcement? Is it not? They've got a secret region.
Can you
That
call it
sounds,
secret if it's been announced?
well, that's right. If you announce it publicly, it's no longer a secret, right? You've kind of shared it publicly.
Okay.
They've got a secret region for U.S. intelligence agencies so that they could put things that are categorized as secret classification into a protected AWS environment. That is becoming a thing because we here in Australia, the Signals Directorate has the responsibility for the government, for example, to classify data centers and where they can put protected, unprotected, and classified information.
Right.
And in Canberra, it's a big thing now to get a Defense Signals Directorate protected status cloud. I know Microsoft are going for one, and AWS aren't because they won't put the support requirements are onshore for data sovereignty. They got to have the people onshore.
Right.
They won't do it. But there are a few of the public cloud providers that are putting together protected status. So these are coming up everywhere. Data sovereignty is a big issue. Singapore has changed their rules now as well around data sovereignty. So it's not surprising considering the footprint size of the U.S. intelligence agencies that Amazon want a piece of that pie.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't, 10 years ago, they were building these huge buildings in the desert to store all of the data that they collect. We were talking in the last show about how they left the military left a S3 bucket open and people were able to download. It wasn't, it was just tweets and Facebook posts and things of people.
Social scrapes, yeah.
So it was somewhat public information that they were storing, but it was still revealing as to who they were monitoring. But when I was doing the training around, you can geofence data and make sure the replication. Like one of the things within the cloud is when you store something, like Microsoft's going to keep 3 copies of it within data centers within the region. or you can do it globally stored, but making things geo-fenced so that it never travels outside the boundaries is a thing. It's hard to. I know, like, is it Europe? We were just saying Europe and Singapore and other countries are starting to think hard about where their data travels because the walls have ears, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, I've had numerous examples over the last couple of years where clients have said, "Okay, well, I can't use, you know, Salesforce,
Yeah.
Salesforce.com, because I'm not confident that my data is going to reside exclusively in Australia. And if something happens and there's a privacy breach, I could be in trouble, or there's an intelligence network in the U.S. could demand access to my data,
Yeah.
right? And
I
so
guess
that data sovereignty is a big problem. And so these I think you're going to see in every like I know there's companies in Israel that have specific cloud private private public clouds specifically for the Israeli Defense Department or
yeah.
the IDF and a few others. So I know that it's a thing, and there's an issue with Brexit as well, right? Because some of the facilities are in the UK, and and when Brexit happens, what does that mean? If it's a hard
Yeah.
Brexit, then that data is no longer compliant with EU regulation, right? So, um, I think we're going to see all of the major players, so Microsoft and Amazon, start doing more of this in the next little while. So,
Yeah.
interesting story when they have announced a secret secret region. That was where I laughed. I thought, that's interesting.
Yeah. Well, I guess they had to do it for financial reasons. They have to file it with the Security and Exchange Commission or whatever to.
Yeah, I imagine it's probably relevant for them, isn't it? So,
Right.
the other announcement that wasn't an announcement this week from Amazon was they're starting to change hypervisors. So, I don't know if you saw this one, but they announced for the C5, the new C5 instance size, that they're going to be using the KVM hypervisor instead of the traditional Zen, which they use on everything else.
Okay.
And the really funny part about this is they announced it. The people at Zen project sort of said, "Oh, it doesn't really mean that much." Well, okay, you would say that. And then it was on an Amazon webpage, and then it got all taken down. Amazon hid it all away.
Oh,
And
okay.
yeah, and so the interesting thing, there's obviously a couple. One is I think this has to do with reInvent. Probably, I think Amazon want to announce this next week, but
Okay.
interestingly, they're going to use a customized version of KVM. And you were talking earlier about Google and Kubernetes and everything else, right? One of the smartest things they ever did was they customized their Linux kernel heavily. They rewrote large parts of it to give them scale. And I have a feeling this is what Amazon might talk about next week. Is the reason they're looking at a customized version of KVM is that they can innovate faster. Because of Zen, they've been tied to a virtual IDE driver for EBS, and so now with KVM, they're able to use an NVMe version of the driver and stuff like that. So I have a feeling they're going to try and take control of that hypervisor layer and innovate, because that's become a little bit of a bottleneck for them, and having an open source project run it and they're just on the board, it's not ideal. They'll fork that, I think.
Yeah, when you've got multi-billion-dollar companies, and hey, Bezos just hit 100 billion yesterday in his net worth. But when you've got multi-billion-dollar businesses relying on this core thing, which is the hypervisor layer, someone's sitting there going, okay, we have to do it ourselves.
Well, yeah, and one of the things that was happening a little bit was I know in my own existence that occasionally when you talk about AWS, somebody from Citrix would pop up and say, "Oh, but we have Zen App Server and Zen and what AWS use Zen, and it's kind of similar." It's like, yeah, yeah, apples and oranges are both fruit, but they're not. They don't taste the same, right? They're not. It's not
Right.
the same. So I always found that odd. But I think Amazon were like, okay, time for us to take a little bit of control over this and put some of that R&D spend to good use and get control of their effectively what is that's the guts of that thing, right? Like,
Yeah.
the hypervisor is everything.
Yeah. It says eventually all new instance types will use the new EC2 hypervisor.
And I think when they talk about that a bit next week, it's going to be through the prism of, oh yes, we still love open source, but we're going to do our own thing anyway, right? So we'll contribute, but we won't contribute everything. So there's that. So I have my Coca-Cola glass now that I will be promoting the good people at Coca-Cola while I take a water.
Yeah, it's no longer contains actual cocaine.
No, I'm just a pitch man. That's my that's my role in this thing is to sell stuff. I guess we have to talk about reInvent next week. They're taking over Las Vegas. Don't know if you looked at the map of the conference, but it spans like 5-6 hotels and casinos. It's like massive. It's half the Las Vegas Strip is going to be AWS's conference.
Wow. Yeah. I was thinking about that, and we kind of talked about reInvent a few months ago, whether it made sense to go. Yeah, look at that area, MGM Grand. It's pretty far apart too. It's not even close together.
They have to have shuttle buses to get people around and stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I made that decision just recently that it's like, okay, next year I'm gonna go. I booked my Microsoft's got their Ignite conference in September. So signed up for tickets for that. That's happening in Orlando. And I think there's a good chance that I'll go to reInvent to 2018 just to get in there and sort of, I'm sure it's probably an overwhelming feeling once you're there to be surrounded by.
I went to vForum, so the VMware conference, man, not quite 10 years ago now. So probably 9 years ago.
Yeah.
And they had it spread across Mandalay Bay and I think Caesar's Palace or something. It was across 2 of the hotels. It was massive, and they I thought that was big. This is just gigantic. This is just like, if you're familiar with Vegas at all and you look at that map, you just go, yeah,
each hotel is a city block, right?
Yeah, they're far. That's really far apart. So they do. Apparently, they're going to have shuttles to get people around. And I once was at the Microsoft Developer Conference in Orlando, and they took out the entire Orlando Convention Center. And it was right when the Segway had first come out. Like, I think it was just that year. And in the Convention Center hall, where they did the main presentations, you could apparently fit 2 747s nose to tail in this thing. And the Microsoft runners were on Segways just to get around the place. And they, in one session, they told you if you wanted to get to the next session on the other side, it was a 21-minute walk.
Wow.
And of course, you had to walk through the Microsoft store right in the middle of the thing. But some of these conferences are massive. So I think next year I'll go to reInvent. It's just such a trek, right? To get to Vegas, it's like a 20+ hour trip. It's really not pleasant.
Everything for you is a trek, right?
Yeah, and unless you're sitting at the front of the bus, it's an unpleasant 15 hours. So yeah, I always end up, I'm not a small human, so I always end up next to the big, 400-pound Fijian rugby player, so that he and I get physically acquainted with one another for 12 or 13 hours.
We'll get you at the front. We'll get you in the front.
Spend big. This rain and money.
Work on the next course.
That's right. But it's definitely something to go to. And if you're going, people who are watching this might actually be there because the registration starts Sunday. It's a whole week. It's Sunday through Friday or something crazy like that. So, but they have a really strong certification track. So if you actually look at the agenda, there's a whole section of the agenda for the whole week is about certifications. It's definitely a excuse me. It's definitely a monster part of what Amazon are doing. They want more and more certified professionals because that's going to help drive adoption, right? That's that accreditation. So, so it's definitely a big thing. I don't know what they're going to announce. I've seen they do the reInvent here in Australia as well. It's pretty small by comparison, but yeah, I've seen Werner Vogel's their CTO. He's a good presenter. I'm gonna watch the keynotes live. I'm gonna watch the live feeds, but he's a good presenter. He's really, really interesting guy. So if you can register and watch them if you're interested, but there will be a ton of new stuff, I would have thought.
Okay, let's commit. We'll go next year.
Yes. We'll try hard. It'll be like the course. We'll just say we'll get it done and we'll be done. And the problem is if I'd have committed this year, I would have had to cancel because of a work commitment. So that's the hard part. But next year, too bad. Next year, work will have to suck it up. Yeah.
Plus, it's work related, right? Like you can, even if it's on your dime, you can say, "Listen, boss, think of all the clients that'll be there."
Oh, that's it. Think of how much value I'll be able to bring back and give willingly and freely to all customers and clients. It'll make me better. It's always funny, I don't know if you do any of the HR stuff. I have to do. And so every year we have because you do contract, right? So you don't have that.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've had to do a set of goals. And things
I get personal development conversations. Okay. So this was, that's it. My personal development plan for the next year will be, I want to go to a conference overseas by an Orange Cloud provider.
Yes.
See what happens. So, all right. I think we've talked enough. How about you?
Yeah. Yeah, let's call that a day. It's
episode 2.
Yeah.
Woo. In the bag, done. Winner.
Yeah, exactly.
And we'll be back again next Saturday. Committed, happy. Gonna make it.
Hopefully everyone will be deep into reInvent, over their turkey hangover from American Thanksgiving this weekend. And
we tried to get turkey today, so we went to the grocery store to buy some turkey because tryptophan, have to get some, and couldn't find an unfrozen turkey, couldn't find a fresh one. And it was like, don't really have time to thaw that bird out, so we'll have to save the dirty bird for Christmas.
You had a couple turkeys at your old house. Why don't you just
they're not. We could go into a whole conversation about how they're not actually turkeys, and evolution can play tricks on people, but
they call them turkeys.
They're called brush turkeys, and they look for all money like turkeys, but they're orthopods. They're not. They're more related to the emu. So there you go. They have no genetic similarity other than they're birds. They're like apples and oranges. They're both fruit, but they're not the same. Anyway, so if you want to join our Facebook group, it's feelingcloudy.com/FB. If you want to sign up for our AWS Solution Architects associate course, it's feelingcloudy.com/AWS-SAA. And you gonna pitch anything, Scott?
Yeah, as usual, I want to see people into my Microsoft Azure user group on Facebook. A link is pasted below. And come and check out the courses. And if you have any questions, add them to the Facebook group. We can answer them in the next episode, or ask them in the course. And we would love your reviews. If you want to take the course and leave a review, that would be much appreciated. So thank you.
2 things or 3 things: join the Facebook group, leave 5-star reviews, send us swag. Anything free. Anything free.
This mug needs to be brought to you by.
That's it. We're cheap. We're easy. Free drinking vessels. All right. I'll catch you next week.
And on that note, okay.
Yes. Bye.
Bye.